The human delegation sat silently in the grand chambers of the Galactic Council. Alan Pierce, Earth's ambassador for the past 7 years, kept his face carefully blank as the vote results appeared on the massive holographic display. For the third time, humanity's petition for full membership had been denied. The vote wasn't even close. Councillor Zithvar, the blue-skinned leader of the council, looked down from his elevated platform with barely concealed satisfaction. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Alan had learned meant smugness among the Varan species. "The council has spoken," Zithvar announced, his translator making his voice sound unnaturally smooth. "Humanity will maintain its observer status for another 50 standard cycles. Your species is simply too young, too unpredictable. Perhaps in another half-century, you will have matured enough for reconsideration." Alan nodded once and stood up. The other 5 humans in the delegation followed his lead without a word. They had expected this outcome. They had planned for it. Ambassador Pierce, called Councillor Trell, one of the few council members who had voted in favor of humanity. "Do you wish to make a statement for the record?" Alan turned and offered a small smile. "No statement is necessary, Councillor. The council has made its position clear. We respect the decision." A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. In previous rejections, human representatives had argued passionately, presenting evidence of their technological achievements, their cultural contributions, their peaceful settlements on 17 worlds. This quiet acceptance was unexpected. As the human delegation left the chamber, Zithvar turned to his assistant. "They took that better than anticipated. Perhaps they are finally learning their place." His assistant nodded. "Or perhaps they are planning something." Zithvar dismissed the concern with a wave of his long 6-fingered hand. What could they possibly do? Their technology is centuries behind ours. They need our trade routes, our knowledge networks. They will complain among themselves for a while, then return to business as usual. Back on their ship, the Earth representatives gathered in the conference room. Susan Wright, lead scientist of Earth's interstellar propulsion program, looked to Alan. "It's confirmed, then. We proceed with Exodus." Alan nodded. "Send the signal. Every human embassy, trading post, research station, and ship will begin withdrawal. Procedures. We have 1 standard week to clear out quietly." Laura Martinez, captain of the ship and one of Earth's few remaining military space officers, frowned. "Some of our people won't be happy about this. They've built lives out here." "The vote was clear," Alan reminded her. "Earth and all colonies voted 98% in favor. We've been preparing for 3 years. Everyone knows what to do." Over the next week, a curious pattern emerged across council space. Human diplomatic missions closed with minimal notice. Trading outposts liquidated their inventories at discount prices. Research teams packed up their laboratories. Vacation. Resorts refunded future bookings. Slowly but steadily, humanity began to disappear from council space. Most council species barely noticed at first. Humans were a minority presence, tolerated but rarely centered in galactic affairs. Those who did notice assumed it was a temporary protest, a childish reaction to the Council's decision. On Centauri Prime, Earth's largest off-world colony, Governor Peter Coleman addressed the population of 8 million humans. "Today, we begin our journey home. The Council has made it clear that despite 50 years of peaceful interaction, despite our contributions to medicine, art, and technology, we are still considered unworthy. Rather than continue to beg for respect, we will chart our own path." The massive evacuation ships had been built in secret over the past 3 years, hidden in asteroid fields and disguised as mining operations. Now they emerged, taking on colonists and their essential belongings. Everything that couldn't be transported was either sold or abandoned. By the end of the month, The pattern became impossible to ignore. Council officials found human embassies empty, doors locked, communication systems offline. Attempts to contact Earth went unanswered. Ships sent to human colonies found empty cities, powered down but otherwise intact. In an emergency session, the Galactic Council gathered to discuss the situation. "This is absurd," Zithvar declared. "An entire species cannot simply vanish." Counselor Trell, a diminutive being with crystalline skin, spoke softly but firmly. "I warned this body that continuing to deny humans full status would have consequences. They are proud and resourceful. Perhaps this withdrawal is their way of showing independence." "Independence?" scoffed another counselor. "They are dependent on our trade networks, our technology." "Where would they go?" "Home, perhaps," suggested Trell. "They've been stockpiling resources for years. Many of us ignored it, assuming they were inefficient or hoarding." Zithvar dismissed these concerns. "They will return when their supplies run low. This tantrum will end soon enough." But the humans did not return. Weeks turned into months. Ships sent to Earth's solar system reported a strange energy field surrounding the entire system, blocking both entry and communication. Similar fields appeared around several previously unimportant star systems where humans had maintained small research outposts. Some council races began to worry. The humans, while not the most advanced species, had been reliable trading partners. They produced unique entertainment, distinctive foods, and had a knack for improving existing technologies in unexpected ways. Their absence created small but noticeable gaps in the galactic economy. Zithvar remained unmoved. Let them hide behind their barriers. When they realize isolation is no substitute for participation in galactic civilization, they will dismantle their shields and beg to rejoin us. 6 months after humanity's disappearance, the Council officially reclassified Earth and all human colonies as temporarily inaccessible and advised member species to adapt to their absence. The matter was considered closed. Inside Earth's solar system, behind the impenetrable energy barrier that scientists like Susan Wright had developed, humanity was far from idle. The withdrawal had been planned for years, ever since it became clear that the Council intended to keep humans in a subordinate position indefinitely. In a vast underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Alan Pierce met with the United Earth government's leadership. The chamber was filled with scientists, military officials, and colony representatives connected via hologram from their new homes in previously secret star systems. "Phase 1 is complete," Alan reported. "Every human has been evacuated from Council space. Our barrier technology is holding strong. No Council ship has been able to penetrate or even analyze it effectively." President Claire Bennett nodded. "And our new allies?" "The fringe species are with us," Susan Wright confirmed. "The Elani, the Doro Collective, the Wisps of Altair Hall. The races the Council deemed too primitive or unusual for membership. They've been ignored or exploited for centuries. They're eager for alternatives." "What about our undercover operatives?" asked Defense Secretary Richard Owen. Laura Martinez answered this one. "All agents who chose to remain behind are in place and maintaining deep cover. They'll be our eyes and ears as we move forward." President Bennett stood, looking at the digital map showing Earth's solar system and their hidden colonies, now safely isolated from Council influence. "For 50 years, we tried to earn their respect through cooperation and contribution. We were patient. We followed their rules. And 3 times they made it clear, no matter what we achieve, they will never see us as equals." She turned to face the assembly. "So now we chart our own course. While they believe we're sulking behind our barriers, we'll be building something better. In isolation, we'll grow stronger. We'll develop technologies they can't imagine. We'll forge alliances with the species they've neglected. And when we're ready, when they've had time to feel our absence, we'll return to council space on our own terms." Alan Pierce looked around the room at the determined faces of Earth's leaders. The council thought this was a tantrum, a childish reaction to rejection. They had no idea what humanity was truly capable of when united in purpose. Humanity had left without a word, but their return would speak volumes. And the arrogant council would face the consequences of their dismissal. Behind the energy barrier, humanity began to build their future, a future the Galactic Council would one day regret not being part of. 5 years passed since humanity vanished behind their energy barriers. The Galactic Council had officially labeled Earth and its colonies as a regressive civilization that had chosen isolation over progress. Most council species had adapted to the absence of humans, finding other trading partners, or developing substitutes for unique human goods. Life in council space continued much as it had for thousands of years before humans arrived. Grand High, Councillor Zithvar stood at the viewport of his private chambers on the council's capital world. His position had been strengthened by the human withdrawal. He had warned the council about human unpredictability, and their disappearance had proven him right. The council had rewarded his foresight by elevating him to the highest position. "Your morning briefing, Excellency," said his aide, placing a data tablet on his desk. Zithvar turned from the window and picked up the tablet. Scanning through the reports with practiced efficiency, he paused at one item, his 4 eyes narrowing. "Another. System failure on Proxima Trading Station? That's the 3rd this month," his aide nodded. "Yes, Excellency." The station's central computer system crashed again. They had to evacuate 3 levels when life support failed. Zithvar frowned. "What is causing these failures?" The technical division reports that the systems were originally designed by human engineers. Without regular updates and maintenance from human technicians, they're becoming unstable. This was not an isolated incident. Across council space, technology with human components or design elements was beginning to fail. The council races had always considered human technology crude and simplistic compared to their own advanced systems. What they hadn't realized was how many of their systems had incorporated human elements over the years, valuing their reliability and ease of use. On the frontier world of Calder, Eric Baldwin wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished repairs on a water filtration system. To the locals, he was Trader Eric, a minor merchant from a mixed-species colony. In reality, he was one of nearly 1,000 human agents who had chosen to stay behind when humanity withdrew. "All fixed," he told the Caldorian facility manager. "Should run smoothly now?" "Many thanks," the manager replied. "We've had 3 different council technicians try to repair it. None could make sense of the human components." Eric shrugged. "Just needed some adjustments. Human tech needs regular maintenance." What he didn't mention was that he had disabled the system's self-updating protocols before leaving. The filtration system would run for about 6 months before failing again, just as similar systems were failing across council space. It was subtle sabotage, designed not to harm but to inconvenience, to remind the council what they had lost. Back on the council capital, Councillor Trell requested a private meeting with Zithvar. Despite their disagreements over human membership, Trell's moderate voice was still respected in council chambers. "The technology failures are not random," Trell said, placing a report on Zithvar's desk. "My analysts have identified a pattern. Systems with human components are failing at an accelerating rate." Zithvar dismissed the concern with a wave. "So we replace them with proper council technology. Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise, purging these inferior systems from our infrastructure." Trell's crystalline skin flickered with blue light, a sign of frustration. "That's not so simple. The humans designed their technology to integrate with ours in ways that are difficult to disentangle. And some of their innovations have no council. Equivalent. Surely you exaggerate, Zithvar said. The humans were barely interstellar when we found them. Our civilizations have existed for thousands of years. Age does not equal innovation, Trull countered. The humans achieved in decades what took most species centuries. We should have recognized their potential instead of dismissing them. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, far from council oversight, a small fleet of unmarked ships attacked. A council supply convoy. The ships used outdated weapons, but employed tactics never before seen in that sector. The convoy's defenders were confused and overwhelmed by the unpredictable attack pattern. Within hours, the convoy was stripped of its valuable cargo. When reports reached the council, officials blamed the attack on pirates using salvaged human weapons. It was partly true. The raiders were indeed using modified human technology, but they weren't acting alone. Human technicians had upgraded their ships in exchange for information and resources. Diane Kelly, a human scientist who had chosen to remain in council space, worked in secret on the frontier world of Jaren. By day, she posed as a researcher. From a minor council race, thanks to cosmetic alterations that disguised her human features. By night, she gathered intelligence on council technologies and shared human innovations with non-council species who had been overlooked or exploited. The council believes they can simply replace human technology, she told a group of alien allies. They don't understand that we designed our systems to be irreplaceable. The integration runs deeper than they know. The alien representatives nodded. They were members of species deemed too primitive or too unusual for council membership. 4 centuries, they had watched the council exploit their worlds for resources while offering little in return. Humanity's silent rebellion had given them hope for an alternative. As the months passed, the technology failures spread. Transportation. Networks experienced unexplained delays. Communication systems developed glitches that council technicians couldn't solve. Environmental systems on space stations required constant maintenance. In council chambers, more voices joined Trell in expressing concern. A representative from the trading guilds presented a report showing significant economic impacts from the cascading failures. Our productivity has decreased 12% in the past year, the guild representative reported. Repair costs have tripled. We need to address this situation before it worsens. Zithvar remained unmoved. These are temporary adjustments. Our scientists will develop replacements for the human systems. The Council has faced greater challenges in its 5,000 years of existence. But privately, Zithvar was concerned. Reports from military outposts described strange ships at the edges of Council space. The vessels didn't match any known design and disappeared when approached. Some believed they were human ships, somehow operating outside their energy barriers. Others suspected a new species had entered council space. The truth was more alarming than either theory. The ships were indeed human-designed, but crewed by mixed species teams. Humanity had not been idle during their 5 years of isolation. They had been building alliances with non-council races, sharing technology and training in exchange for resources and intelligence. In his hidden office on a frontier mining colony, Eric Baldwin received an encrypted message from Earth. The code was simple. Phase 2 begins. He smiled and began preparations for the next stage of humanity's long game. On the council capital, Zithvar was awakened by an urgent alert. A council research station had been attacked and stripped of its data cores. The attackers had bypassed advanced security systems with ease, suggesting insider knowledge. Most disturbing was the message left behind, projected onto the station's central screen. The consequences are just beginning. Zithvar called an emergency council session. For the first time in his long career, he felt a flicker of doubt. Perhaps dismissing humanity had been a mistake. Perhaps their silent departure had not been a retreat, but a strategic withdrawal. And perhaps, most worrying of all, they had not been as isolated as everyone believed. Across Council space, human agents received the same message Eric had. Phase 2 was beginning. After 5 years of quiet preparation, humanity was ready to show the Galactic Council exactly what they had lost by underestimating Earth. The consequences of the Council's arrogance were about to become impossible to ignore. 10 years had passed since humanity vanished behind their energy barriers. What began as occasional technology failures had grown into a full-blown crisis for the Galactic Council. Transportation networks broke down regularly. Communication systems failed without warning. Space stations suffered life support malfunctions. The Council economy had entered a recession as trade slowed and resources were diverted to emergency repairs. High Councilor Zithvar paced in his private chambers. His once pristine blue skin had dulled with stress, and his staff noticed he now blinked his 4 eyes out of sequence, a sign of deep anxiety among his species. Another border world has petitioned for emergency resources, his aide reported. Telos Colony claims their defense systems are completely offline. They've suffered 3 raids in the past month. Zithvar slammed a 6-fingered hand on his desk. Denied. The central worlds must be protected first. These frontier settlements knew the risks when they established outposts so far from Council protection. His aide hesitated. Sir, that's the 7th petition we've denied this month. Some Council members are questioning your priorities. Let them question, Zithvar snapped. I've led the Council for over a decade. We've survived worse crises than malfunctioning technology and a few pirate raids. But privately, Zithvar knew the situation was deteriorating. Council scientists had failed to develop adequate replacements for human-designed systems. The integration was too deep, too complex, and the raids were becoming more frequent and more targeted, suggesting the attackers had detailed knowledge of Council defenses and supply routes. On the frontier world of Telos, Greg Powell watched from a hillside as another raid began on the colony's main settlement. Unlike previous attacks, this one was precise and restrained. The raiders disabled the colony's remaining defenses, but caused minimal civilian casualties. They targeted only military supplies and key resources, leaving food and medical supplies untouched. Greg was another human agent who had stayed behind. But unlike most others, he had recently revealed his true identity to select allies. He now coordinated openly with a growing coalition of non-Council species and dissatisfied Council members. A ship landed near his position, and a tall insectoid being emerged. This was Krivak, leader of the Saren, a species the Council had deemed too aggressive and unpredictable for membership. The raid goes well, Krivak clicked in his native language, which Greg now spoke fluently. We captured the weapons. Cache and the communication array. Greg nodded. Good. Remember, the goal is to pressure the Council, not harm civilians. We want these colonies to see us as an alternative to Council rule, not a new threat. My warriors understand, Krivak assured him. The Council abandoned these people. We show them a better way. This was happening across dozens of border worlds. Species that had been rejected or exploited by the Council were forming alliances, coordinated by human agents. They offered protection and stability to colonies the Council had abandoned. In return, they gained supporters and resources. Meanwhile, on the Council capital, Councillor Trell had gained significant influence. Many Council members now looked to the moderate voice who had warned against dismissing humanity years ago. We cannot continue as we have, Trell told a packed Council chamber. Our infrastructure continues to degrade. Border worlds suffer, while we debate. And now we face new evidence that cannot be ignored. The central display activated, showing footage of a sleek, unfamiliar vessel easily outmaneuvering a Council patrol ship. The unknown craft moved with impossible speed and grace, seeming to predict the patrol's maneuvers before they occurred. This footage was captured near the Viridian system last week, Trell explained. The vessel matches no known design in our database. However, our analysts believe it shows signs of human engineering, vastly advanced beyond what we previously observed from them. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zithvar stepped forward. Speculation and fear-mongering, he dismissed. Even if this is a human vessel, one advanced ship does not change the balance of power. The Council has the largest fleet in known space, a fleet that increasingly cannot navigate safely because our guidance systems are failing, countered a representative from the shipping guilds. A fleet that depends on supply lines that are regularly raided. A fleet spread thin trying to protect too much territory with too few resources. The debate grew heated. Some council members called for a military expedition to breach Earth's energy barrier by force. Others advocated for attempting diplomatic contact. A growing faction supported Trell's proposal to offer humanity full council membership and formal apologies for past dismissals. Zithvar watched his authority erode as more council members sided with Trell. He needed a decisive action to reassert control. Against the advice of his military commanders, he authorized an expedition to breach Earth's energy barrier. 20 of the Council's most advanced warships were assembled for the mission. Karen Miller, formerly a human diplomat, and now working openly with the alien resistance, received word of the planned expedition. She immediately sent warnings through a network of human agents and allied species. The Council was about to make a critical mistake. The expedition arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system with great confidence. Their ships carried weapons that could theoretically disrupt the energy barrier based on 10 years of research. Zithvar himself monitored the mission from the Council capital, expecting a triumphant breakthrough that would restore his political standing. The Lid Council ship fired its disruptor weapon at the barrier. For a moment, the energy field flickered, and the Council commanders celebrated prematurely. Then the barrier not only restored itself, but expanded outward rapidly. Before the Council ships could retreat, automated defense systems activated. Not a single shot was fired directly at the Council vessels, yet one by one, their systems shut down completely. 20 of the most advanced warships in the Council fleet were left drifting in space, powerless but with life support intact. A message played on every ship's communication system. In perfect Council standard language, your vessels have been disabled, not destroyed. Your crews will remain safe. Rescue ships may approach to retrieve personnel, but any vessel attempting to retrieve or tow these ships will face similar consequences. Consider this a demonstration of restraint, not weakness. When news of the disaster reached the Council capital, Zithvar's position became untenable. Emergency sessions were called. Blame was assigned. The political balance shifted dramatically toward Trell and those who advocated for reconciliation with humanity. Meanwhile, beyond Council space, the coalition of human-allied species grew stronger. Greg Powell and Karen Miller traveled openly between frontier worlds, offering technology, protection, and fair trade agreements to colonies the Council had neglected. The coalition didn't demand the absolute loyalty the Council required. They offered partnership instead of subservience. On a frontier trading post, Greg met with representatives from 5 species, none of whom had Council membership. Humanity doesn't seek to replace the Council as rulers, he explained. We envision a different kind of interstellar community, one where all species have equal voice regardless of their age or technology level. The representatives were skeptical but intrigued. One asked, "Why should we trust humans when you hid behind your barriers for a decade?" "We needed time," Greg replied honestly. "Time to develop our technology independently. Time to build these alliances in secret. Time to let the council experience the consequences of their arrogance. We could have returned with weapons and demands, but instead, we return with offers of partnership. Back on Earth, behind the still intact energy barrier, humanity prepared for the next phase of their plan. The Council's failed military expedition had confirmed what their intelligence suggested. The Council was weaker than it appeared. The carefully maintained image of unified strength had cracked, revealing internal divisions and technological vulnerabilities. President Olivia Shaw, who had replaced Claire Bennett 5 years earlier, addressed the United Earth government. For 10 years, we've worked in isolation to build something better than what the Council offered. Our technology has advanced centuries beyond what they believed possible. Our alliances include dozens of species the Council dismissed as irrelevant. We are ready for the next step. Across human space, preparations accelerated. The fleet of advanced ships seen at the edges of Council territory was just a small fraction of what humanity had built. Their vessels incorporated technologies developed independently and innovations shared by allied species. What the Council had dismissed as human unpredictability had become their greatest strength, the ability to adapt, to think differently, to find solutions where others saw only problems. The time had come for humanity to emerge from behind their barriers. The Council was about to learn that their dismissal of humanity had been the greatest mistake in their 5,000 years of existence. The consequences were about to become unmistakable. 15 years after humanity's disappearance, the Galactic Council faced unprecedented challenges. The economic recession had deepened into a full depression. 1/3 of Council worlds were experiencing regular technology failures. Border worlds suffered from constant raids. Political divisions had weakened the once unified government. And Zithvar, though still Grand High Counselor in name, had lost much of his authority after the failed expedition to breach Earth's barrier. On a particularly tense day in the council chambers, alarms suddenly blared throughout the capital city. The energy barrier around Earth's solar system had vanished without warning. Before the council could respond, reports flooded in from across their territory. Unknown ships had appeared near every major council world simultaneously. The vessels were clearly of human design, but far more advanced than anything humanity had possessed before their withdrawal docked in orbit above the council capital. The largest of these ships broadcast a message on all frequencies. Admiral William Harris, commander of humanity's new fleet, appeared on screens across the planet. Attention, Galactic Council. After 15 years of isolation, humanity is prepared to rejoin galactic society. We come not as supplicants seeking membership, but as equals offering a new path forward. We request a meeting with the full council in 24 hours to present our proposal. The message was calm, professional, and left no room for negotiation. Similar messages played above dozens of council worlds. None of the human ships took hostile action, but their strategic positioning made their power clear. They could strike at the heart of council civilization if they chose an emergency council. Session was called immediately. For the first time in living memory, all 500 representatives of council species gathered in person rather than through holographic projections. The massive chamber hummed with fear and speculation. Zithvar tried to project confidence. As he addressed the assembly, "We must present a unified response to this human provocation. I propose we demand their immediate withdrawal from council space before we consider any negotiations." Councillor Trell responded with surprising force. That approach led to our current crisis. The humans left without a word 15 years ago because we dismissed them without respect. I suggest we listen to their proposal before making demands. We cannot enforce. The debate might have continued for hours, but it was interrupted by another alarm. A single human ship had bypassed all the capital's defenses and now hovered directly above the council chamber. Before security forces could react, A transport beam deposited 5 humans in the center of the chamber. Admiral William Harris stood. At their center, flanked by Linda Ross, the new human ambassador, John Morris, lead engineer of humanity's technological renaissance, and 2 others. They wore no weapons, but carried themselves with absolute confidence. "We apologize for the dramatic entrance," Harris said, his voice carrying through the chamber without artificial amplification. "But we've waited 15 years for this meeting, and we didn't want to risk further delays." Zithvar stepped forward, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in stress. "This is an outrageous violation of Council sovereignty. Guards, detain them." The security forces moved forward, but stopped abruptly. As their weapons powered down, John Morris held up a small device. "We've temporarily disabled your weapons systems. No one needs to be harmed today." Linda Ross, the ambassador, stepped forward. "We come with information and an offer, not threats." First, the information. Humanity didn't spend 15 years in isolation. We've been building a coalition with species the Council deemed unworthy of membership. The chamber's main display activated, showing star charts of territories beyond Council space. Dozens of previously unaligned worlds were highlighted, now part of what the display labeled as the Coalition of Free Worlds. "These are the species you overlooked," Ross continued. "The Sarin, too aggressive for your tastes. The Luminari, too spiritually focused for your materialist values. The Drift Collective, too unusual in their social structure. We found that what you viewed as liabilities, we saw as strengths. Diversity breeds innovation." John Morris took over the presentation. "During our isolation, we shared technology with our new allies while developing our own. Our advancement wasn't linear, as you might expect, but exponential." The display showed technical specifications that made even the most scientifically advanced Council members murmur in surprise. Several Council worlds that had been suffering the most severe economic hardships broke protocol to speak directly. "Will you help us repair our failing systems?" asked the representative from Proxima Trading Hub. "Our people are suffering," Linda Ross nodded. "That's part of our offer. We're prepared to provide technical assistance to any world that requests it, Council member or not." This caused an uproar. In the chamber, Zithvar tried to regain control. "You cannot bypass Council authority and deal directly with member worlds." "That authority was always more fragile than you admitted," Admiral Harris replied. "The Council claimed to represent 500 species equally, but some were always more equal than others. The economic collapse of the past decade has exposed those inequalities." The humans proceeded to display evidence they had gathered over 15 years. Records showing how the Council had deliberately suppressed human technological development while appropriating their innovations. Documentation of similar treatment toward dozens of other, younger species. Proof that the Council's central races had maintained their dominance, not through superior ability, but through systematic manipulation. As the evidence mounted, several Council representatives moved to stand with the humans. These were members of species that had suffered similar treatment, kept in subordinate positions despite their contributions. Councillor Trell spoke into the stunned silence that followed. "I have advocated for reform within the Council for decades. I warned that our treatment of humanity would have consequences. Now we must face those consequences and consider their offer." Linda Ross outlined humanity's proposal. The Galactic Council would be dissolved and replaced with the Coalition of Free Worlds, where all member species would have equal representation, regardless of their technological development or age. Central Council worlds could join as equals or remain independent. Technical assistance would be provided to all who needed it, with priority given to worlds facing humanitarian crisis. "This is not an ultimatum," Ross emphasized. "We don't seek to replace one form of domination with another. But the current system has failed, as evidenced by the economic collapse you've experienced in our absence. Many council representatives voiced immediate support for the proposal. Others, particularly those from the oldest and most privileged species, objected strongly. Zithvar attempted to call for the humans' arrest again, but found his authority completely undermined in the days that followed. Several council worlds independently reached out to the human fleet requesting assistance. The humans responded promptly, sending technical teams to repair critical infrastructure. As promised, they prioritized worlds facing life support failures and food shortages, demonstrating that their concern for suffering was genuine. More surprisingly, they shared their advanced technology openly. John Morris personally oversaw the distribution of technical specifications and training programs. "We don't believe knowledge should be hoarded," he explained to amazed council engineers. "Innovation flourishes when ideas are shared." Within weeks, several major council species had formally announced their intention to join the new coalition. Others remained hesitant, watching carefully to see if humans would abuse their newfound power as the council had. On the frontier worlds, the change was even more dramatic. Planets that had been abandoned by the council during the economic crisis found themselves embraced by the coalition. Greg Powell and Karen Miller traveled between these worlds, helping establish local governments that respected each species' unique needs while integrating them into the larger interstellar community. The transition wasn't entirely peaceful. Some council hardliners attempted military action against coalition forces, but found their weapons systems mysteriously disabled before they could fire a shot. The humans demonstrated technological superiority without inflicting casualties, reinforcing their claim that they sought partnership, not dominance. Zithvar watched his 5,000-year-old political system crumble around him. In a final desperate attempt to maintain power, he attempted to activate ancient defensive systems hidden beneath the council capital. Before he could succeed, he was detained by his own security forces, now loyal to the reform movement led by Councillor Trell. Admiral Harris met with Trell afterward. "We never wanted war," Harris said. "Just recognition of our potential and our right to determine our own path." "I understand that now," Trell replied. "Perhaps if we had recognized it 15 years ago, much suffering could have been avoided." Throughout council space, the message spread. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as catalysts for a new galactic order. The consequences of the council's arrogance had finally arrived, not as punishment, but as transformation. A new era had begun, one where all species would rise together rather than stepping on each other to climb higher. 20 years had passed since humanity withdrew from council space. 5 years had gone by since their dramatic return. The old Galactic Council no longer existed. In its place stood the Galactic Assembly, a new form of interstellar governance based on equality rather than hierarchy. Earth, once dismissed as the home of an upstart species, had become the center of this new galactic community. The New York spaceport buzzed with activity as ships from hundreds of worlds arrived for the inauguration of the Assembly's permanent headquarters. The massive building stood where the old United Nations once had, but it dwarfed that structure in both size and significance. Its design incorporated architectural elements from all member species, a physical representation of the Assembly's core philosophy, unity through diversity. Frank Cooper, the first president of the Galactic Assembly, watched the arriving dignitaries. From his office window, he had been elected by representatives of over 700 worlds, including former council species and those previously excluded from galactic governance. His election had been unopposed, a testament to humanity's new standing in the interstellar community. "It's almost time, Mr. President," his aide reminded him. "The ceremony begins in 30 minutes. Frank nodded. "Is everything prepared for the tribunal?" "Yes, sir." Chief Justice White has the proceedings arranged. The defendants have been informed of the process. Before the celebration could begin, there was one final matter to address: the trial of former council leaders accused of species suppression and manipulation. Unlike the old council, which might have sought revenge or harsh punishment, the Assembly had established a justice system focused on restoration rather than retribution, in a chamber beneath the main Assembly Hall. Amanda White, Chief Justice of the Interspecies Court, prepared for the proceedings. She had been a human rights lawyer before humanity's withdrawal and had helped design the new legal framework that would govern relations between hundreds of diverse species. The defendants were brought in under light security, former Grand High. Counselor Zithvar led the group, his once proud bearing now diminished. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray, and his 4 eyes rarely blinked in unison anymore. Behind him came other former council leaders who had participated in the systematic suppression of younger species. "This tribunal is now in session," Amanda announced as representatives from across the galaxy took their seats. "Today we address actions taken by the former Galactic Council leadership that violated the rights of multiple species and undermined the stability of interstellar civilization." The evidence presented was overwhelming and irrefutable. During humanity's 15 years of isolation, human agents and their allies had gathered extensive documentation from the Council's own archives. They had found records dating back thousands of years, showing how the Council had deliberately held back technological development of younger species while exploiting their resources and innovations. Most damning were the records, specifically about humanity. The Council had recognized humanity's potential from their first contact. Internal reports had acknowledged humans' exceptional adaptability and innovative thinking. Rather than welcoming these traits, the Council had seen them as threats to the established order. The repeated denials of full membership had been part of a calculated strategy to keep humanity dependent and subordinate. Zithvar was given the opportunity to speak in his defense. "We acted to preserve stability," he insisted. The Council maintained peace across thousands of worlds for 5 millennia. Rapid change and unchecked innovation lead to chaos. We sought to guide younger species gradually into the galactic community. Amanda listened respectfully, but pressed for specifics. "Did you inform these species of your guidance? Did you give them the choice to develop at their own pace?" Zithvar had no satisfactory answer. The truth was clear. The Council had never seen younger species as equals, only as resources to be managed and exploited. After hearing all testimony, Amanda delivered the verdict. This court finds the defendants guilty of systematic species suppression, deliberate technological sabotage, and violation of sovereignty rights. However, in keeping with the Assembly's principles, we do not seek punishment that serves no constructive purpose. The sentence was not imprisonment or exile, but service. The former Council leaders would work alongside representatives of the species they had suppressed, contributing their knowledge while learning directly about the harm their policies had caused. They would help build the society they had once. Feared Zithvar seemed confused by this approach. "You have the power to imprison or execute us. Why show mercy?" "Because the goal is not to punish, but to build something better," Amanda explained. "Revenge would only continue the cycle that led to the Council's failure. We seek to break that cycle." After the tribunal concluded, the inauguration ceremony began. Thousands gathered in the main Assembly Hall, with billions more watching via holographic broadcasts across the galaxy. The atmosphere was one of hope and new beginnings. President Frank Cooper took the podium. 20 years ago, humanity faced a choice after our third rejection from the Galactic Council. We could have protested loudly, demanded recognition, or even threatened force. Instead, we chose to leave without a word and build something better on our own terms. He gestured to the gathered representatives. What we found in our isolation was that we were not alone in our experience. Hundreds of species had been deemed unworthy by Council standards. Together, we discovered that our differences were not weaknesses, but strengths. Our varied perspectives led to innovations none of us could have achieved alone. John Morris, the engineer who had guided humanity's technological renaissance, demonstrated this point with a presentation showing how the Assembly's combined knowledge had solved problems that had plagued individual species for centuries. Diseases once thought incurable, energy shortages, environmental crisis, all addressed through collaborative efforts. In the audience sat Councillor Trell, now serving as liaison between former Council worlds and the new Assembly. Trell had been among the few who had warned against dismissing humanity years ago. Now that warning had been vindicated in ways even Trell couldn't have imagined. Linda Ross, who had transitioned from human ambassador to Assembly diplomatic corps. Leader introduced representatives from the newest member species. These were civilizations that had only achieved spaceflight in the past 5 years. Under the old Council, they would have spent decades or centuries as observers before being considered for membership. In the Assembly, they were welcomed immediately as equals, with mentorship but without subordination. Our guiding principle is simple, Linda explained. Lift all or none. We rise together, not by standing on each other's shoulders, but by lifting each other up. Outside the Assembly headquarters, a monument was unveiled. It depicted representatives of dozens of species standing together with a simple inscription: united in diversity, stronger through cooperation, wiser through exchange. Greg Powell and Karen Miller, who had worked for years building the coalition of non-council species, watched the ceremony from a quiet corner. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Karen asked. Greg shook his head. When we first went into isolation, most of us thought we'd eventually return with advanced weapons to force the Council to respect us. No one predicted we'd end up replacing the entire system with something better. Throughout the galaxy, the effects of this new approach were already evident. Worlds that had been resource extraction colonies under the Council were developing their own industries and cultures. Species that had been deemed too aggressive or too passive or too unusual for Council standards found their unique traits valued in the Assembly. Perhaps most telling was the fate of the energy barrier technology that had protected Earth during its isolation. Instead of keeping it as a military advantage, humanity had shared it freely with all Assembly worlds. What had been a shield to keep others out had become a tool to protect, developing civilizations from exploitation as they found their own paths. Forward. As the ceremony concluded, Frank Cooper offered a final thought to the assembled representatives. The old Council feared change, feared the unpredictability of new ideas and perspectives. We embrace that unpredictability. We don't know exactly where our shared journey will lead, but we know we'll face it together as equals. The arrogant Council that had dismissed humanity was gone, replaced by a community humanity had helped build. The consequences of that dismissal had not been revenge or destruction, but transformation. Humanity had left without a word 20 years ago, but their return had spoken volumes about the power of patience, cooperation, and the strength found in diversity. A new era of galactic civilization had begun.